Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. And a very good evening I bid to all our brothers and sisters, our fellow respected lecturers and the audience here. A warm welcome I bid to our guest of honor, Dr. Nazrol Kamil. How are you, sir?
Okay, Alhamdulillah, I'm good. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good also. I'm at home right now. You where, sir? At home also?
I'm at home. I'm at home now.
Alhamdulillah. So, how's your experience of this working from home experience, sir?
It's got pros and cons.
Yeah, same
Yeah.
with me. So not only the student are affected, but also the lecturers, am I right? So yeah, this is the thing that we have to adapt and be agile to it. Because we don't know, right? If you can see, right, the number of cases COVID-19 there is no sign of the down apa? There's always
the numbers going down.
Yeah, there is no trend of that. In fact, yesterday recorded the very highest number of cases, which is 2,000 plus, and I think this is very threatening and very shocking news for us, our nations. So, but worry not. These are the challenges that we have to face and overcome that, inshallah, just to stay safe and keep all the precautionary measures. All right, so thank you, sir, for accepting our request to share some inputs to all of us regarding the topic. All right, so first and foremost, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Azuan bin Nordin. I'm the third year first semester of Islamic Finance student. So inshallah, I'll be your coordinator or some sort of moderator for this evening session. So together with me as well is our distinguished speaker, Dr. Nazrol Kamil. So Dr. Nazrol Kamil will share some inputs and knowledge regarding our topic. Yeah. So do you guys know what is our topic? Right. So our topic for today's session is actually dealing with life challenges. Okay, dealing with life challenges. So when I first read this topic, right? I find it very interesting and catchy at the first place, and also relatable because everyone defines life differently. Everyone defines life at their very own unique way. All right. So as for me, right, life is actually an uncertain roller coaster ride. Whether you have two options, whether you have to embrace it and learn from the journey, or you have the choice to rebel it and resenting every moment of your journey. So every decision that you make, that you choose regarding the challenges might lead to the certain consequences. Okay. So apart from that, I've been informed that our distinguished speaker will be explaining or sharing 10 elements regarding this topic. Okay, so what are those elements will be shared by our guest speaker right after this. And so stay tuned and please stick until the end of the session. Yeah. All right. So I think without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to our guest speaker, Dr. Nazrol. So Dr. Nazrol, the floor is now yours.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Thank you, Brother Azuan, for that introduction. If you don't mind, I would like to share with you some slides that I have prepared for this particular session. Are you able to see my hold on,
Yes, you can. You are not sharing, right?
Hold on. Okay, there it is. All right. Are you able to see my screen, the slide?
Yes.
Is everybody okay? Are you able to see the
screen?
Okay, so
yes, we can see the slide.
I've chosen this topic, dealing with life challenges, and I think it's appropriate to mention a little bit about why I chose this topic. And generally why I chose this topic is because recently I personally experienced some personal life challenges. And in trying to deal with those challenges, I have had the benefit of, getting some good advice from some very learned and wise people. I've also read some books, and I've also, watched some videos. So through that, I have picked up a few things which have helped me personally to deal with these personal challenges that I faced. And I thought that it would be perhaps useful to also share these sort of ideas or thinking with the rest of you. So, and it's also important for me to make note here that I'm not an expert on this topic, all right? So don't expect a very scientific and very overly comprehensive discussion of how to deal with life challenges. I'm certainly not an expert on this. I'm just simply sharing what are the things that went through my mind, and what are the things that have helped me personally in dealing with these challenges. So it's essentially just a process of sharing some thoughts and some experiences with all of you. And I guess at the end, after I have finished with this sharing, if you have any comments or any other ideas, any perspectives that you would also like to share, I'm very happy to also hear from all of you and what you have to say about this topic, because I also want to learn. I also want to try to take in some of the ideas that you may have pertaining to this topic. Okay, and as I'm discussing all these things, I would consider these as reminders to myself first and foremost, right? So all these things I'm trying to remind myself, and I'm extending these reminders to all of you, and maybe some of these things can be useful ideas for all of you as well. Okay, so let's get started. So let's just basically just define the word challenge here, right? So of course, when I use the word challenge here, I mean a number of different things, or a number of words can be used. It could be some kind of trouble, a problem that you are facing, some kind of pain or misfortune. But generally, it's something that we can say that it is uncomfortable, something that you do not like, that you do not welcome, that you do not want, which enters your life, or which sort of comes your way, right? And I think and these challenges can either make you sad, or it could make you, in some cases, I guess, angry, and in some cases, it is a source of stress for you, right? So I think that's basically how I would define the word challenge. And when we talk about challenge as well, challenge can come in different aspects of our life. It can be related to our health and physical well-being. It could also be related to our work, or in the case of you students, it could be in the case of your studies. It could be related to money. It could be money problems, right? Financial challenges, or it could also relate to your relationships with other people, maybe with your friends, your family, the people that you work with, or the people that you deal with on a daily basis. So these are just sort of challenges that we typically face in our life. So what I've tried to do here is to come up with sort of 10 thoughts or sort of reminders. As I mentioned before, it's reminders for myself first and foremost. And maybe some of these can be also useful to some of you in dealing with your own challenges in your life, right? So there are 10 things that that sort of came up with. So we'll start with number one, right? So this is number one. So again, I just decided to do slides so that at least you don't have to look at my face for 1 hour, and so this kind of like breaks the monotony a little bit. Okay, so all right. So number one, I got this little video, so let's just watch this short video. Okay, so are you able to see that video? I mean, I think the audio wasn't that very clear, right? Is it okay?
It was okay,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So anyway, so that's just a simple video to basically say that sometimes things happen, right? Things happen. So I came up with this idea of sort of telling yourself to expect the unexpected. And the point is that sometimes in our lives things will not go as we plan, and things will not always be good and happy, and sometimes there will be bad things that will come along our way. And of course, in trying to say this, is not about trying to be very pessimistic and cynical and always having negative thoughts, always thinking that bad things will happen to you. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say here is that it's about trying to have a mindset where you are ready to face challenges should they come your way, right? So we should not live our lives thinking that everything will always be perfect and there will never be problems, there will never be any challenges that will come our way. So having that mindset is, I think, is important, so that if and when something unpleasant comes your way, you are, I suppose, more ready to face it. And in looking at this, let me just share with you. I think many of you are familiar with this verse from the Quran, and it's very clear in this verse. Allah has already, told us as His creations that we will be tested, right? So life is not meant to be always a bed of roses. There will be times that you will be tested. And also, I like this particular hadith, which I came across some time back. Let me just read it to you. There shall come upon the people a time in which the one who is patient upon his religion will be like the one holding onto a burning ember. So I'm not sure whether you know what an ember is. So let me just show you a picture of it. So basically, ember is like a burning coal, right? It's like in Malay we call it bara api. So sometimes this life, it poses challenges to us, such that in order to remain steadfast and to remain patient and to face these challenges, it's like holding on to a burning coal, right? Which is difficult. I mean, it's painful, it's challenging, it will really test us, but that is the reality of life. So I think that's the first point that I want to share with you, that we should not tell ourselves that everything will be perfect all the time. From time to time, things may happen, and we should be ready, for that. So that's number one. Moving on, number two is, okay, I've came up with this picture of an iceberg here, right? So I think you know what an iceberg is, right? So above the water, you can see a smaller piece of the iceberg, whereas below the water is a much larger piece of the iceberg. So I thought this was a good sort of analogy to describe, one aspect of our lives, wherein, a lot of times we always focus on the top part, right? Whereas we ignore the bottom part. And what I'm trying to say here is we need to remind ourselves of this bottom part. So what do I mean by the top part of the iceberg, and what do I mean by the bottom part of the iceberg? The top part of the iceberg is sometimes the problems that we face, right? The challenges that come into our lives. Maybe we are ill, or we are sick, or we have problem with our studies, or we have one problem, our relationship with one particular person. And when this happens, oftentimes that particular problem will dominate our entire lives. We will think that this problem is everything, right? I mean, it's so big in our thinking, in our mind, that we forget about the other part of our life, which is the iceberg, which is below the water, and these are all great things, things which are going good in our lives. So that's just normal human sort of behavior, right? When we have one problem, we tend to focus, it dominates our thinking. We get stressed, we get upset, we get sad because one particular thing is going wrong with our lives. Whereas there are, thousands of other things in our lives which are doing fine, which are doing great, right? So I think it's normal human behavior to have that. So it's good to remind ourselves, if and when we face a challenge, yes, the challenge is there. Yes, it is a problem, but we need to remind ourselves that there are other aspects of our lives which are, which are great and that we should be thankful for, right? So to me, the second important point here is that the key to enduring difficult times is basically gratitude, or, to have shukur on the many things that we have to be thankful for. So for that, again, let me just offer some verses from the Quran, and I think all of you are very familiar to this, familiar with this, right? Allah said in Surah An-Nahl, verse 18 here, right? So there are many blessings that come from Allah, and if we were to try to count them, we will not be able to do so, because there are just so many blessings that Allah has given His creations. And of course, there's also, Surah Ar-Rahman, as you know, this verse, which is repeated 31 times, right? So, there are many blessings that we need to basically be, thankful for. So on this topic of gratitude, right? Of course, it's a big topic that we can spend hours talking about. But let me just share with you, I think, 3 things which I like to remind myself of from time to time. Number 1 is, I call this the free gifts, right? In life, a lot of times we get a lot of things from our Creator, from Allah, even without us asking for it. Just let me throw this question at you, right? How many of us, at night when you before you sleep, right? Before you sleep, you make dua to Allah, right? Before you sleep, you make dua and say, oh Allah, when I wake up tomorrow in the morning, when I open my eyes, please make sure my eyes work. I can actually see with my eyes. How many of us make that dua? Or how many of us make the dua that, when I wake up in the morning tomorrow, Allah, my ears can hear, my tongue can speak, my nose can smell. And how many of us actually make that dua, right? I don't know, maybe some of you do. I don't, right? I don't. I'm guessing not many of us make that dua. And yet in the morning when we wake up, all these things work, right? Our eyes work, our nose works, our ears work, our hands work, our legs work. Most of the time, all these things will work fine, right? And we get all these things even without asking explicitly, specifically from our Creator. So I consider all these as free gifts that sometimes we take for granted. We never appreciate them because we are given. These things are given to us for free, right? So that's the first thing I want to share. The second part, as far as gratitude is concerned, is this issue of the new car feeling. Now, I suppose for students, it's maybe a little bit less appropriate to give this example of a new car, because I think, many of you would not have owned a car or do not own a car. So maybe it's better for me to give the example of a new phone example, right? And I'm sure all of you have phones, right? I'm not sure how new your phones are, but if you can remember the time that you first got your phone, right? Do you remember that? I don't know, maybe this could be a year ago, 6 months ago, whatever, some time ago when you got your new phone. Can you imagine that, that feeling that you had when you had this new phone? You're very excited, just before you go and purchase the phone, and then when you first got the phone, you unbox the phone, and then you set it up and you figure out the functionality and you start taking pictures and all that, and it's a very, very good feeling, isn't it? I mean, you get really excited about this new thing that you have. But let's say 6 months or 1 year after, right? Do you still have that feeling? I mean, do you still feel good about your new phone? Probably not, right? Because as time passes by, you sort of, forget that feeling, right? Whereas if you think about it, you still have that same phone, right? It is the same phone that you've had for the last 6 months or 1 year. And yet, why is it that you don't feel as good anymore? So I think one of the problems is because, we sometimes need to remind ourselves, right, of the things that we have in our lives that we often take for granted, that if we don't remind ourselves, we don't appreciate it, right? So this is part of, I think, having gratitude, sort of So from time to time, you sort of have to press the reset button and basically, appreciate the things that you have. Okay, I have a phone, I really appreciate this phone, or I have a car, you appreciate the car, and so on, even though those things may not be new. And the last thing, just a quick one, is I think it's very useful to make a list. Try to make it a habit. From time to time, you maintain a list of the things that you want to be thankful for. And I think this is a good practice because in a way it will discipline yourself to always be in the mode of having gratitude and shukr. So this is something which I make my daughter do. So I force her to basically every day she has to come up with one thing that she has to be, that she is thankful for. So she maintains a list. So the list is growing, and I will check that list every day. So every day she will write down a new thing that she is thankful for. And I think now the list is, I think I started this a few months back. So there's over 100 items on that list. So she continues adding on. So I think it's a good practice to, to ourselves, to do it, to sort of tell ourselves to have gratitude and to have shukr. Okay, so yeah, so that is point number 2. Point number 3. Okay, so here I think Azuan mentioned about a roller coaster. So here I'm showing you one roller coaster. Yeah, this is where I visited end of last year in October. In October last year, I was in South Korea. So I was actually on this particular roller coaster. So I decided to share this with you. And as Azuan mentioned earlier, life is a roller coaster, right? And a roller coaster that has basically ups and downs, right? And it's often important to remind ourselves this, because especially when we are facing difficulty, we must always remind ourselves and tell ourselves that if we are in a period of difficulty, it would not, it should not be permanent, right? Because difficult times will go away, and they are to be replaced with more pleasant times or less difficult times. And I'm sure, again, all of you are very familiar with this particular verse of the Quran, which many of us read, right? So this verse is, almost the same verse is repeated twice in a row, right? So after every difficulty, there will be, inshallah, relief, right? And there are many stories, for example, that we can use in the case of prophets, of their experiences. And one example that comes to my mind is the example of Prophet Yusuf, right? So you remember in the story of Prophet Yusuf, they experienced one duration of very difficult time where they had 7 years of drought, right? 7 years of difficulty. And so the point is, yes, it was a very long time, but it didn't last forever. So after 7 years, then they had 7 years of prosperity or good times. So the point is, if we are facing challenges, we should tell ourselves, okay, yes, it is, we have a problem now, but it should not be, this is only temporary, right? So sooner or later, things will get better. And the other thing in relation to this so-called ups and downs, I've come up with this so-called cycling analogy, right? So this is again something I'm just sharing bits and pieces of my personal life with you. So I recently picked up cycling, so I enjoy cycling on a road bike. So I cycle on the road, and I like to use this cycling analogy, which basically says, after you struggle going uphill, you will appreciate the downhill ride more, right? So, I don't know how many of you, have cycled or do cycle regularly, but if you do cycle, I think you can relate to this. It's like, when you're going uphill, it's difficult. You have to, put in effort. You are breathing hard. It's tiring, right? But after you go up that hill, when you go down that hill, that downhill ride becomes a lot more enjoyable, simply because you have gone through the hardship. So in many cases, life is like that, right? So if you go through periods of difficulty, and when these periods of difficulty go away and things become better, trust me, you will appreciate these good times more because you have gone through hardship, right? As compared to somebody who has not gone through that much hardship, then when things are good, you don't really appreciate it because you have never gone through difficult times. And in relation to this, let me just share some of my past experiences when I was younger, right? The first thing is okay, so that can you see that picture there? What does that look like to you? Okay, this is just I want to share with you when I was in college, right? So I was studying in a country outside Malaysia where halal food is difficult to get, right? So I was staying in this particular residential college, and they provided food. Okay, and of course, we told them that we are Muslims, that we need to have halal food and all that. So at that time, they it was they couldn't figure out kind of how to give us halal food. So in the end, at the beginning, at least in the first few years that I was in that college, this is what they serve for dinner, right? So I don't know whether you can see that picture clearly. Basically, they give you a plate of rice, and then they give you one dish, right? So that dish is basically that is a tomato. So they'll give you a big piece of tomato stuffed with rice, right? So can you imagine? This is what I had for dinner for many, many nights. Basically, this is what they serve us, students, the Muslim students there, for dinner, right? So we had a plate of rice, and our lauk or our dish is tomato stuffed with rice. So, it was, this was one of the challenges. Of course, there were many other challenges. I just wanted to mention, one of these things. Then I want to share with you the experience that I had when I was, working earlier on before I joined UIA. I spent, I think, about 6 months working in Singapore, and there was a particular project that I was on there, and I can tell you that was one of the most difficult times of my working life. And I put a picture there. That's a picture of Singapore at night. And why did I show you that picture? Because when I was, for the whole 6 months that I was working in Singapore, I did not see daylight. Almost literally, I did not see daylight. Why? Because I was working 16 hours a day, right? So my typical, working hours was I would come in at 8 in the morning, and we will only finish around 12 or 1 a.m., 12 midnight or 1 a.m. So we were working 16 hours a day, basically every day for the whole 6 months. So I hardly saw any daylight when I was, working in Singapore. So it was really, really tough. Very, very difficult 6 months that I was there. And I also showed you a picture of, that's a Petronas station. I was also working in Petronas, before this. And I've actually worked as a petrol pump attendant for 2 weeks. Believe it or not, I was actually for 2 weeks, I was working as a petrol pump attendant in a Petronas, station. And again, that was one very, very difficult time in my life. It's I don't know how any of you have any experience or not, but it's really tough, right? Because it's very hot, and then you are inhaling all the petrol fumes, right, for 8-10 hours a day. So it's very, very tough working at that. I've never been so physically exhausted in my life, I think, as compared to that 2 weeks that I was working, as a petrol pump attendant. And finally, this part here, I'm showing you a stack. Can you see that picture? Is a staircase, right? Okay. Again, this is from my days of working in Singapore. When I was working in Singapore, at that time, there was no musalla, there was no surau, there was no prayer room, in that building that I was working in. So I literally had to do my salat, my prayers, at the staircase. That you can see that picture, right? So basically, I had to pray there. At least the prayers during the day, I mean Zohor and Asar, right? So, and that was very difficult. So you can imagine, you're praying there, and then sometimes people will be like walking past by, and then they were like looking at you, what are you doing here? So it's very uncomfortable, very, testing, very challenging. But these are the things that I've had to kind of, go through, right? So what's the point of me sharing all of you, sharing with all of you all these experiences? relating back to the point that I was mentioning earlier, you know, if you have gone through difficult times, then when you have more pleasant times later, you really appreciate it more. So for example, now I appreciate how easy is it, you know, to get halal food. And now I, you know, really appreciate my current job, which is, you know, nowhere close to as challenging as how I've had it before. And now I appreciate how convenient it is, you know, for me to do my ibadah, right? I don't have to, you know, go through so much difficulty now. You know, you can pray comfortably in air-conditioned musalla and surahs. So the point is, again, let me just repeat, right? So when you are facing any challenges, you know, it's good in the sense that later on, when things are better, you appreciate your good times more. Okay, next, number 4. Okay, so here I'm sharing with you, this is a picture. This was taken in Grampians National Park in Australia sometime in 1995. So that's me over there, and that's my best friend. So of course, you know, this is only a dramatization. You know, it's not really, you know, my life wasn't really at risk or anything here, but it's just, you know, me and my friend, we like to over dramatize things and take, you know, funny pictures and things like that. But I think what I wanted to show you this picture to illustrate the next point, which is when you are in difficulty, you should ask for help. Right, so that's the point. Right, so when we are facing challenges, don't feel that you need to face the challenges alone, you know, by yourself without getting help. So of course, when you ask for help, you can ask for help either from, you know, the people around you, you know, your family members, your friends, you know, or even your lecturers or anyone around you. But also, I think this is the point that I want to stress on here, is also seek help from the ultimate source of all help, which is our Creator, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Right. So that's the point that I want to mention as this next point, which is the power of dua. Right. So when we are facing difficulty, we are not totally helpless. We can always ask for help from, you know, from Allah, from God. And just some quick reminders. Again, this topic of dua is a very, very big topic. You know, you can spend a lot of time talking about this. You know, so I'm just going to pick up 3 things which you know, which I find very useful for myself. Number 1, when you have a problem or a challenge, right, always think of Allah first, right? So I think you know, for example, I think it's very common that when we face difficulty, sometimes we don't think of Allah first, and we always kind of you know, go to certain people which are close to us in our lives, and we talk to them first, and then Allah is only, you know, Allah only comes to our mind much later, right? So let's say you have a problem. Let's say, you know, you know, did poorly in an exam, or you did badly in an assignment, or you get into an accident, or you fall ill, or you receive some bad news or something like that, right? So oftentimes we will call our best friend first, or we call our parents first, or we will call somebody who is close to us first, right? So I think, of course, we can do that, but I think we can also make it a habit to always, you know, think of Allah first, right? So, you know, when something bad happens, think of Allah first, make dua, and then you can go and, you know, call your parents, call your best friend, or call whoever it is. So I think this is a good habit that we can try to, you know, try to discipline ourselves to do. The second point is, you know, and this is something which I learned sometime in the past, and I found this very, very, you know, enlightening for myself personally, which is that, you know, sometimes when you're in trouble and then you make dua and you ask Allah to, you know, to help you, or to give you something that you want or that you need, or to get you out of trouble, right? And then sometimes you don't get it immediately. So one thing that I've learned is that the best gift that Allah can give to you is actually that of patience. You know, let's say, for example, let's say you have one problem. Let's say you don't have enough money. Okay, so suppose you need 2,000 ringgit to do something, to pay your fees or to settle a bill or to settle a loan or something like that. You need 2,000 ringgit, and then you are finding it difficult to get this money, and then you make dua. You say, Allah, please help me, settle this money problem. Please give me 2,000 ringgit. Now, of course, for Allah to give you 2,000 ringgit is it's so easy, right? I mean, it's no difficulty at all for Allah to do this. Allah can just decide, and then you will get the money. So it's no problem for Allah to give you this. But sometimes Allah gives you an even better gift in the form of patience. So Allah does not give you the money now or delays it, and instead, if you can be patient to wait for this, I think the reward for that is much better for you. So I think it's often important for us to remind ourselves that when we ask for something, the best gift that we can actually get from Allah is actually patience, right? Because that will be better for us in the long run. And finally, I think it's also important for us to remind ourselves to make dua for everything, right? And I think Allah loves it when His creations, make dua to Him, ask Allah for help. And when we are facing very big challenges or big problems or big difficulties, it's natural we will make dua. If let's say we are very sick, or we are, we had a big loss, or something really impactful has happened in our lives, and then we make dua. But sometimes when we have small, little, trivial problems, we don't make dua. So I think that's not wise. I think we should make it a habit that every single issue we may have, every single problem that we may encounter, we make dua for that, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think it's a good practice to have as a Muslim. And let me just give you a simple example. One issue that I often encounter is that when I have to go to the shop near my house, right? So where I stay, there are some shops. So sometimes I have to go there to run some errands and go to the bank, or buy bread or something like this, right? So one problem that I always encounter is parking problems, right? Because there's not enough parking, too many cars, right? Even during this time, with COVID and everything, the parking is always full. People will double park, and it's very difficult to get parking. So what I've tried to do is every time before I leave the house, you make dua, oh Allah, please help me and make it easy for me to get parking. So that's just one example of how you should make dua for everything you do, even if it's seems as trivial as trying to find parking. Okay. All right. Next point, number 5. Okay. So here, just to break the monotony, let's watch another video. Okay, if you don't mind.
You may open the envelopes containing your papers. The exam starts now.
Oops, sorry. Are you able to hear? Is the audio clear enough?
Yes, sir.
Because it's not loud on my end.
You may open the envelopes containing your papers. The exam starts now.
Okay, so that's just a very short, of course, the actual video is much longer. So I just wanted to show you, that little video just to break the monotony and so that I can have a little bit of break from talking. But it's basically highlighting the point of, how some people say, and to some extent, I believe it's true, life is an examination, right? So it's one very long examination. And the important point that I want to stress here is that it's important to recognize that even though life is an exam, everyone actually has a different question paper, right? So yes, it is an exam, but it is not like a standardized exam like your SPM or your A levels or your SATs or GMAT or whatever. So it's not like a standardized exam where everybody gets the exact same question paper, right? So everybody gets a different question paper. So why is that important? It's important to recognize that if you have the different question paper, it's pointless, or in fact it's counterproductive to actually try to compare your life with that of other people, right? So your test, your life as a test is different from another person's life, which is also another form of test. So this is the point that I want to speak a little bit now. Is about the pitfalls of comparing your life with that of other people's. So there are two, two things to take note of, right? And I call this pitfalls of life comparison. Number one is that, when you compare your life with other people, you are often guilty of what I call selective perception. In other words, when you look at another person's life, you only pick up the things which you think are going great in their lives, but you ignore the other things which are not so good in that person's life, right? Because the truth of the matter is, when you compare your life with another person, you do not get the whole, you do not have intimate knowledge of every single aspect of the person's life, right? For example, if you see your neighbor has a nicer house, or you see your cousin has a nicer car, or you see your friend has a better looking wife or something like this, or you see your school friend who has a better job, right? So you are comparing all these things, but that those things that you see, it doesn't represent the entire life of that person, right? You only see snapshots of what you think that person's life is all about. And when you do this, it is a problem, because you are, essentially picking up the best aspects of that person's life, and then you are comparing it with yours, and then you say, oh, that person's life is better than mine, and then you get upset, you get stressed, you get sad. And that may not necessarily be true, right? Because what you are doing is you are selectively having perceptions about other people's lives, and then you are comparing it with yours. So this is a very dangerous game to play, and it often leads to a lot of disappointment and stress and unnecessary problems in your life. And especially these days, right? Today we live in the age of social media, right? So we see all kinds of pictures which people post on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and so on, right? So you see all kinds of pictures where, these people are so happy. They are, buying all kinds of cool things. They are visiting all kinds of interesting places. They are doing all kinds of very, interesting activities. And then you cannot help but feel, a little bit envious. You feel a little bit jealous. And you feel, why is my life not as interesting as these people? But the problem is, when you do this, is that you are guilty of selective perception, right? The pictures that people post on social media, on Instagram, that does not represent their entire life, right? It's only a snapshot. It's only a picture. It's only a 10-second video, right? It doesn't tell you the whole life story of that person. Yes, at that moment when he was taking that picture, or when she was taking that picture, she looks very happy, but who's to know that the rest of the time whether that person is truly happy or not? How do you know that that person doesn't have also a long list of problems and troubles in that person's life? So here is the thing that I want to share with you, and this is something which I also remind myself constantly. Do not compare your life with another person, because that person's life exam, life test is different from yours. And another way in which it is different, which is that second part, is that people have different timelines, right? And you remember we looked at the roller coaster example. So life has ups and downs, right? So the point is, sometimes, at a particular time in your life, you may be, down, and the person you are comparing is is having a good time, right? So he's up, you are down at this point in time. But as you know, as we talked about the roller coaster example, life will go up and down. So although you are facing difficulty now, things are not so great for you now, but later on, things may change for the better. So the point of the matter is, life as an exam, as a test, it has its ups and downs. So you should not compare with other people, because you may be comparing your life at the time when you are down, and that person that you are comparing with is up, right? So it's not a fair comparison in that sense. So I think the point that I want to stress here is basically, as much as possible, don't compare with people. Or if you want to do so, please compare, wisely. Again, sometimes, I'm guilty of this. Let me just share with you, for example, right? I made a decision to join academia. And when I did, I took a very, very big pay cut, right? So, and today if I want to compare, right, the amount of money that I make as a lecturer is okay. The amount of money that I make as a lecturer sometimes is only 10% or 20% of what my friends make, right? The people that I studied together, that I went to college with, that I studied together, these people now are CFOs, they are CEOs of big companies, and they are making, their salaries is 10 times, 20 times what I make. So if I start comparing, right, I will get very upset. I will get very stressed. I will get very, unhappy with my life. So the point is, you should not make that comparison, right? You should be thankful with the rizqi that Allah has given you, and you must believe that all this risk comes from Allah. So if Allah decides to give you something at a particular point in time, you should be thankful for that, and do not compare with people. So not avoiding this comparison can save you a lot of stress and unhappiness. And even if you have to compare, learn from this particular hadith, right? So don't just compare with people who have more than you. You should also compare with people who have less than you. So then you will be more appreciative and less envious of what other people have. Okay, next. Number 6. Okay, so another video. So I think many people like funny cat videos. I'm showing you a cat video. Okay, so basically the point is that it's the next point is that I want to share with you is how we react to unwanted events. It actually makes a very big difference. Right, so things will happen in your life. Bad things will come your way, and I think what makes a difference is how you actually react to those events. Now, these events can either be a test or it can be a form of punishment, right? So what makes the difference, as I mentioned before, it depends on our reaction. So if something bad comes along our way, if we react through patience, right? We accept, we reda, we accept that this has happened in our lives, then inshallah we will get, we will pass the test. It will be a form of a test on us, and we will be rewarded, right? So another hadith there, right? So again, Allah wants to bring some good to one of His creations. Allah will give him, some kind of test or trial to face. And of course, if instead we don't react in a positive way, instead we get upset, we get stressed, we complain, and so on, it's basically just a form of punishment, for us, right? And so if you think about it, if something actually bad happens to you, you can actually turn that bad thing into a positive thing, into a good thing, and look at it as an opportunity to get reward, as a result of our patience. And let me just give you a very simple example. Recently, in the house that I'm staying right now, I used to have a lot of electricity problems, like electricity problems, where the electricity will just, cut off suddenly. Sometimes it happens during the day, sometimes it happens, at night, sometimes it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, it will just, electricity will just, cut off like that, right? So, and it happened quite frequently, sometimes, on a bad day, it will happen like 10 times a day. It will just suddenly cut off, and then you turn back the electricity on again, and then half an hour later, it will cut back again. So initially when this happened, right, it's of course, natural sort of a reaction. You get upset, you get stressed, you say, what's going on? What is it? And so on. So you start complaining and so on. But after a while, I kind of say, okay, fine, it's not something that I can really control. Of course, you try to do things to rectify the problem, but to some extent, sometimes certain problems you don't have control. So then, I basically tell myself, okay, the next time this happens, just be patient, just reda, and just like, okay, it's a test, right? And even came to a point that it came to one point where when I was actually looking forward to electricity being cut off, right? Because when the electricity is cut off, and then you have to endure, not having the fan or aircon, and then or at night it's going to be very dark, So you kind of have patience, you endure the challenge that face your way, and you have faith and conviction that you will be rewarded, for that patience. So in a way, you kind of look forward to something bad happening, because that will actually give you an opportunity to, inshallah, get reward from Allah. Okay. Next, number 7. How am I doing in terms of time? Brother Azuan, it's still okay, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So number 7. Okay, another video here. I don't know. I just like this video so much. To me, it's quite funny. Okay, so I don't know. I think it's so funny. That it's so funny. I'll show it to you. Okay. Okay. So anyway, so what is the point here? It's basically a tip, right? When something bad happens, right, just tell yourself this. And this is the principle that I try to remind myself, from time to time, if and when something bad happens. Basically, it could be worse, right? Now, no, I really believe this, no matter what happens in your life, whatever comes along your way, it can always be worse. So for example, let's say you break your arm, right? Let's say, okay, you something happened, an accident, you break your arm. It can be worse, right? It could be worse. How can it be worse? You can break both your arms, right? And let's say you break both your arms, right? Can it be worse? Of course, it could be worse. You could say break both your legs. In addition to, I'm sorry, I couldn't find a picture where the person, has broken both his legs and his arms. So I'm just showing you that picture. That's all I found. So if this happens to you, let's say you break both your arms and both your legs, can it be worse? Yes, it could be worse. You could, I don't know, break your spine. Maybe, you could be like paralyzed and you can't walk anymore, right? So the point is, it can always be worse. And of course, the worst thing, I guess, is, if you die, right? So the point is that the principle that I try to remind myself of is this thing, that, something happens, always tell yourself it could be worse. Let's say, for example, as a student, let's say you did an assignment and then you got, let's say, a B, okay, and you were expecting an A and then you got a B. You just tell yourself it could be worse. I could have gotten a C, right? Or let's say, later on, if you get married, for example, let's say you marry your spouse, and your spouse, let's say, is very messy, and you are the very tidy type of person, and you get a wife or a husband who is very messy, for example, right? So you just tell yourself it can be worse, right? Your spouse could be a serial murderer, for example, right? So things can always be worse, and this is something which we try to see the brighter side of things, right? So when something bad happens, tell yourself it could always be a little bit worse. Okay, number 8. Okay, so here I'm showing you this is a real picture of me. This is actually me many years ago when I was much younger. So I'm sharing with you that when I was younger, when I was in college, I used to like to play a lot of basketball. So basketball was my favorite sport at that time. And just to share with you, my so-called idol at that time, idol in the sense of sports, right? In terms of basketball, was this this particular guy who played for Seattle Sonics, right? So anyway, what's the point of sharing this? The idea here is that when you face adversity, it's important to look for inspiration, right? So when you are facing certain difficulty, you are facing certain problem or an obstacle in your way, right? And you need sort of it's very useful to do something in order to get inspired or to give you courage, to give you motivation to actually face those times of difficulty. And in doing this, I think it's useful to listen to learned as well as charismatic scholars who can often give you words of encouragement, give you certain knowledge, right? So that would hopefully put you in a better mood, put you in a better sort of spirit to face the challenges that come your way. So in this respect, these are some of the scholars that I, just to share with you, these are the people that I regularly listen to. Of course, you may have your own favorite ustaz, you may have your own favorite speaker. I'm not saying you must listen to these guys, but whoever it is, but I think it's useful to actually have to listen to videos or or to read books that from people that you feel you can get inspiration from, right? And another important source of inspiration for me, is to watch movies. So again, I'm sharing with you another one sort of hobby or passion of mine is I love to watch a lot of movies, right? And in particular, I like movies that have the feel good factor. That that after watching it, you feel inspired. You feel that you can you can accomplish more things. So just to give you some examples, these are some of the movies that have in the past given some kind of inspiration to me. Again, you may have your own favorite movies, but the point is you need to find these sources of inspiration so that when you are facing periods of stress or you're feeling down, these things can actually be of some help. Okay, number 9, we're coming towards the end already. Okay, so let me just share with you this hadith. So for me, this hadith is a very interesting hadith. I'm not going to read it, but let me just basically summarize it to you. Basically, the Prophet ﷺ wanted to get some milk from the camel, right? So he asked for this milk from the camel from one person, and that person refused to give the camel, to provide the milk, for the Prophet. And then the Prophet said, okay, why don't you ask for the milk from another person? And that second person agreed to give the milk, for the use of the Prophet. So after this has happened, the Messenger of Allah and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made dua to Allah. He said, "Oh Allah, increase the wealth of so and so," meaning referring to the person who did not give the camel, did not give the milk, and give so and so provision. In other words, only just enough provision for the person who actually gave the milk. So I know this is only a da'if hadith, but to me, the principle coming out of this is I think valid, and it is worth to look at this hadith. So basically, the point is this, right? Sometimes wealth or money or things that are pleasant can actually be a form of test on us, right? So actually sometimes it's not necessarily good to be very rich or to have lots of wealth, especially if we are not able to handle that wealth in the right way. Okay, so right, so sometimes we have money, right? So lots and lots of money, or sometimes we are in great health, we're very fit, we're healthy, we're not sick in any way. Okay, or sometimes we have other things which we which are good in our lives, right? So all these great things happening in our lives, wealth, it could be our health, or it could be other blessings that we receive. So the point is, all these things which are great that happens in our lives, they can also be a form of a challenge, right? Again, this is a topic in itself, so I don't want to go too much into this, and I think you get what I mean, right? So before this, we are talking about challenge in terms of, you know, difficult things, problems, things that we don't like, unpleasant events, and so on. But remember, the flip side, right? If things go our way, those can also be a challenge, you know, to us, right? So when we receive wealth, health, and all these other blessings, do we handle it, or do we, you know, manage it in the right way? Okay, and finally, number 10. All right, so okay, so I like this hadith, you know, a lot, and this is a hadith which I try to remind myself, you know, over and over again, especially when I was, you know, when I'm going through difficult times, right? So let me just read the hadith to you. I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, "The likeness of this world in comparison to the hereafter is that of any one of you dipping his finger into the sea, let him see what he brings forth." So basically what the Prophet is trying to explain here is the comparison of this world, dunya, right, with the hereafter, akhirat, right? And the comparison basically is, if you take your finger, you put your finger into the sea, right, and then you remove your finger, there will be some droplets of water that still remain on your finger, right? Maybe 2 or 3 drops of water. So those 2 or 3 drops of water, basically this is dunya. This is this world, right? And all the water that is in the sea, that is akhirah, that is hereafter. So I think that the lesson that we are trying that we can get from this is that the dunya is actually so trivial and is so small in comparison to what we can look forward to in the akhirah. And just as a fun fact, right? So I looked this up. Okay, apparently there is an estimated 1.332 billion cubic kilometers of sea on Earth, right? And if you consider 1 drop of water as having 0.05 milliliters of water, so if you want to compare, there is a total of 2.664 times 10 to the power of 25 drops of water in this world, right? And okay, so there's a lot of zeros. There's a very, very big number there, right? So how big is that number? That is basically 26. It's not 26 million. It's not billion. It's not trillion. What comes after trillion? Quadrillion, quintillion, sextillion, and finally we have septillion. So you can imagine in this world, how many drops of water are there in the sea on Earth? 26 septillion drops of water. So the world that we are living in now, the comparison is only 2 or 3 drops compared to 26 septillion. So it's a big, huge comparison, huge difference. So the point is this. You know, sometimes when we face difficulty in our lives, you know, we get very stressed, we get very sad, we get upset, you know, sometimes to the point that we consider doing something unthinkable like committing suicide and all these things, right? You know, just remind yourselves, right? It is only 2 or 3 drops of water, right? We should be more concerned about, we should be more worried about, we should be looking forward to that 26 septillion drops of water, which is the hereafter, which is the akhirah, right? So yes, you know, sometimes we may face a lot of difficulty. All right, fine, just bear with it, be patient, because this world that we live in is only temporary and we have something much better to look forward to later on, inshallah. So let me just end with this last analogy, right? This last analogy. I just came up with this analogy, and again, this is just to tell you basically what one of my other favorite, well, not favorite, but things which I regularly do is I like to travel. Okay, so I love to travel. And of course, now with COVID, you know, I can't do much of that. But you know, so I came up with this taxi ride to the airport analogy. Okay, so it's basically an analogy to reinforce the point that I just mentioned. So imagine you are going for a 10-year trip overseas, right? So you're going for a very long trip, 10 years overseas somewhere, right? and you have 2 weeks to prepare for this trip. Okay, so for these 2 weeks that you have to prepare for this very long overseas trip, should you spend this time doing, the following: arranging for you.
The first one, sir. So I guess that's all, yeah, Dr. Nazrol. Can I proceed? Or do you guys can hear my voice or not? Feel free to comment if you guys can hear my voice.
Yes, brother, we can hear you.
Okay, so I proceed, yeah, because my screen right now showing the slide of the guest. So I proceed, yeah. All right. So thank you so much, Doctor, for your presentation. And I really love the way you illustrated all the 10 thoughts that you have shared with us, the analogy, the pictures, the funny videos, the Quranic verses and the hadith useful that we can apply later in our life. Okay. One point that I really that feel like making me feel intrigued is when you share the cycling analogy, where when you face the more you face the hardship, the more you will treasure the ease time. I think this is really true because no matter how hard the hardship, how hard the setbacks, or how hard the test you are facing, there is always a light in the end of the tunnel. So all you have to do is be resilient, be adaptable, be agile, and have a faith that at the end of the day, all of these tests and all of these setbacks will come to an end. Okay, so yeah, I think all in all, actually, there is no mountain too high, there is no ocean too deep. Inshallah, by applying all those 10 quotes and all those 10 thoughts that have been shared by our distinguished guest, Dr. Nazrol, inshallah, it will equip us with the necessary motivation and knowledge, so that we can feel that we have the motivation that, okay, I can overcome this thing. Okay, because everything is can be done. Okay, if we have the willing to overcome it. All right. So right now we are moving to the next session, the next agenda, which is the Q&A session. So right now I open the floor to any questions that you would like to ask, or any opinion regarding our topic. And then I would highly appreciate, I would highly more than welcome actually to read your opinions or your questions in the chat box. Yeah. In fact, you can also use your mic if you have anything to ask. So then our distinguished guest will answer accordingly. Right. By the way, guys, I do have questions. I have received quite questions from the WhatsApp group. Let me read. Yeah. Right. Sir, can you hear me, sir? Dr. Nazrol?
I don't know. I got disconnected. Did I manage to finish? Did you see until the end?
I only see until the last slide. I don't remember. I don't remember.
Yeah, about the taxi, sir.
About the taxi.
Okay, so you managed to, because suddenly I got disconnected.
Oh, I see.
What did I reach the slide that says thank you?
Not yet, sir.
Okay, so where did I stop? Okay.
Taxi.
So did I finish the analogy on the taxi?
No,
Not
just
yet.
the
You just
intro
give
of the text.
the two texts, the two boxes, the taxi as well as the preparation for the 2 weeks preparation for 10 years of vacation. That thing.
Oh, okay. So that one I already covered lah. So finish lah. Okay, hold on.
But
Sorry.
the visual
I don't know.
got static there.
Okay, hold on. Okay, let me continue.
Alright, sir. Okay, take your time.
Okay, so where did I stop?
Until okay, next.
Okay.
Yeah, two
So
boxes.
okay, so I already discussed these two things.
Okay, you only display this thing, but you didn't explain yet.
Oh, okay. All right. So anyway, okay. Sorry, just a little bit technical challenge. Okay, so basically I came up with this analogy, right? So suppose you are going on an overseas trip and then you have 2 weeks to prepare. So do you spend this time, arranging all your flight, your accommodation, and, pack your things and all that? Or instead, do you actually spend all the time worrying about the taxi ride to the airport, right? Trying to find the best taxi that you can possibly get, make sure, that person to give the taxi is the most comfortable, will take you through the most scenic route, play some good music in the car and so on, right? So and why is this analogy important? Because oftentimes I myself I personally guilty of this, and I'm sure many of us are also guilty of this, because we worry so much about the things that happen to us in this world, right? We want to make sure we have the best house, we want to have the best car, we want to have the best job and so on, right? Whereas in reality it's only comparable to that taxi ride, and we should be more concerned about preparing ourselves about how our life is going to be in the hereafter, right? So, and I think I know this is a very straightforward point that you can relate. It's not new knowledge. So it's more of a reminder to all of us to basically, remind ourselves sometimes that when we are facing difficulty and we get really stressed and so on, just sort of remind ourselves that it's just a short taxi ride to the airport, right? Before you know it, this life is going to end. And we have that long, basically we have an eternity to look forward to in the hereafter. So I think that's the point of this taxi ride to the airport analogy that I have come up with here. Okay, so that's it. I think that was the last point. This is just to sort of recap the points that I made earlier on, the 10 items. And then this is the thank you slide. That's all. Okay, thank you, brother.
All right, cool, sir. Thank you very much for your presentation. I highly appreciate your efforts in arranging all the slides, finding all the videos. It's really entertaining, I would say. One of the point that I would like, I really find it intriguing is when you stated that the best gift from Allah is actually the patience. I think this is really true, because you know what, as a vicegerents of Allah, right, we as Muslims, we do make a lot of du'as, but not all of du'as are being granted by Allah. So I think whenever the Muslim are being tested for not being granted their permission or wishes, what the thing that makes him to always keep praying to Allah is actually the patience. Then I think that is the most wisdom phrases that I have ever heard in my entire life, I would say. All right, so we are now moving on to the Q&A session. I open the floor to any questions that you have anything in mind, so feel free to write in the chat box. All right, so okay, we have a few questions here in the chat box. All right, so from Yasmin Zulaika, All right, thank you, Doctor, for sharing those useful tips. But I have a question on how to deal with toxic people, like how we need to react. That's her question. Thank you, Yasmin.
Okay. I think you already know the answer to this question. I think a lot of times we already know what we're supposed to do. So that the challenge is not so much trying to identify what is the right thing to do, but the challenge is actually doing it, right? I think we can, I'm sure all of you, we have all learned about, for example, the practices of our prophet, right? So, and I think in trying to deliver the message of Islam, the prophet faced a lot of challenges, right? And he faced a lot of, toxic people. I don't know what you mean by toxic people here, but, I would imagine people who are unpleasant, who are, difficult, who makes life difficult with you, right? For you. So, so if we learn from the lesson of the prophet, we try not to deal with them in a negative way, right? So if they are unpleasant to you, you be pleasant to them, right? Of course, don't put yourself in harm's way. And if somebody is going to, that person is going to hurt you, don't purposely go and see that person and spend time with that person, right? So we are talking about situations where you cannot avoid facing certain people. Then you try to be as pleasant as you can, with that person, even though that person is unpleasant. He or she may say things that are very hurtful. You just have to be patient and treat them well. And I think we know this already, right? I think you already know the answer to the question that you asked. But the challenge is how you do it, right? That's not easy, because it's only natural human feeling. Somebody say something hurtful, you want to fight back, you want to say something hurtful back. So it's not easy, and I can't say that I can do that all the time, because sometimes I also will have so we try our best. I think the important thing is we know what is the right thing to do, and we just try to remind ourselves to do that right thing.
All right, cool, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
So the key takeaways is that to know the right thing and to be able to do that thing rightly. All right. So moving on to the second question, Yazid Yassin, he asked that, okay, in these challenging times and with the holding of virtual classes instead of the physical ones, as a lecturer, is there a thing or two that are good or positive coming from having online classes? So thank you, Yazid, for your question.
Okay, what is the positive thing about online classes? Now, okay, if I can be honest with you, right? If I can be honest with you, of course, there are some positive things about online classes. One is you have the convenience of working from home, right? So working from home can be, in some ways convenient. You don't have to commute to the, I don't have to commute. For me, if to go to the office takes about half an hour, right? So I don't have to spend half an hour going and half an hour coming back. You save money on petrol, on toll, and so on, right? So in terms of logistics, it can be convenient to have that. Other than that, I don't know. It's like, because if you ask me honestly, I don't quite like doing things online. Because for one thing, as an educator, and if for any kind of session, I prefer to have that face-to-face engagement. You want to see the reaction of people. You want to see whether they are dozing off, falling asleep, or they are distracted, or playing with their phone or something. You know what I mean? So and with online, you cannot gauge. Like, and I was talking just now, all throughout, I'm just thinking, are these people listening at all? Are they like falling asleep or whatever? So so with online, you do not have that that kind of feedback, immediate or instantaneous feedback. But in terms of I guess one benefit is the convenience of. Other than that, I don't know. I can't imagine what the advantage is.
Right, cool. So thank you.
Okay.
Right, we have 4:30 right now, so maybe I can take another 3 questions, can sir? to
Yeah,
before
sure. Okay, go ahead.
Right. So the third last question is from Mumtaz Nabiha. Okay, thank you, doctor, for sharing. I have a question. How you get motivated every day? Thank you, Mumtaz. How you get motivated every day?
Yeah, I guess for for motivation is it depends on what actually motivates you as a person. I think different people are motivated by different things or in different ways. So I think you have to see for you personally what motivates you. For example, you may have a certain quotation that you like, a particular hadith or a verse of the Quran that you like, or it could be a particular ustaz or speaker that you like. It could be anything, right? It could be anything. So you have to figure this out yourself, and you make it a habit. If needed on a daily basis, you refer to these things as a way to motivate yourself, right? Maybe you put it as your the screensaver for your computer, or from the when you on your phone, you as your what they call this background, your desk, what they call this, the wallpaper for your phone. You can have certain quotations or something that will motivate you. So it's not for me to say you should do this or you should do that, because different people have different things that motivate them. Like for me, I can tell you what motivates me is I like to watch movies, certain movies. So there are times that I feel down, that I feel stressed, or I feel sad. I will open that particular movie, and I know which part already. It's not, I won't watch the whole movie, right? So I will go straight to that part of the movie that gives me the inspiration, and I will just watch for that 5 or 10 minutes. And usually that will actually bring up my spirits. So you have to find and identify what is it that actually moves you, and that is the thing that you should that you should rely on.
Yes, agree, sir.
Okay.
Different people get different motivation to drive on forward. All right. So our second last question from Shazliza. If the problem is out of our control, for example, it comes from other persons, is it okay if we run from the problem, situation, to save ourselves first from being negatively affected by the problems or situations? Thank you, Shazliza.
Okay. It's difficult to actually give you sort of a prescription on how to deal with such a situation, because I guess you have to look at the specific the specific situation, and decide with wisdom, after thinking about it and after maybe consulting some learned people, and to decide what is the best course of action to deal with that situation. So I don't think it's appropriate for me to say it's either no, you face the problem, or no, you should run away from the problem, because without knowing the specific circumstances, I don't think it's fair to actually say one way is always the best way to deal with any problem. Because again, if we learn from the Prophet, right? There are certain situations where the Prophet will stay and face whatever issues we have, right? But in some situations, for example, he made the hijrah. For example, he moved from Mecca to Medina. So in some situations, the best course of action is to stay and face the problem. Or in certain situations, you should, maybe the best way is to actually, go away, right? And I think as it's for you to analyze that situation and to see what is the best solution, to be faced, right? And I guess you need to basically, of course, be because you yourself know, right? For example, okay, let's take a hypothetical situation. Now, let's say you have a person that whenever you see this person, you get really angry, right? Or you feel the need to do something bad or unpleasant, right? So if you feel that you cannot control yourself, then maybe the best solution is to take yourself away from that situation, right? If you know that you cannot control yourself, you might end up doing something unpleasant, something bad, something negative. But but if you think that you can overcome that, that temptation to resort to something negative, then perhaps you should face that problem. I'm sorry, I can only give you a very general kind of response, because without knowing the very specific situation, it's actually difficult to.
Yeah, of course, sir. Yeah, I do agree. I think your key takeaway is that we have to smartly choose our battle, am I right? So there are certain things that we can comprehensively consider all the criteria and whatnot. There are the things that we have to just quit it at the very first place. All right, there are also some questions that I received. That this would be the very last question from WhatsApp from my friend. His question is that, all right, sir, you said just now that seek help when you are in tough position. My question is that what can you say to the people in tough position, but they did not want to seek help because of their mindset is not everyone have it easy. There may be person who in more tougher position than me. What's your opinion on that matter, sir?
Okay, so if I understand the question correctly, is that you are in a situation where you have a problem, but you do not want to seek help, right?
Yes.
Because you think your situation is not that bad. Some people have it worse, right?
Yes.
That's the question. Okay, well, okay, I have to think first. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Okay. Okay, like for me, okay, again, it's again quite difficult to have a very general sort of response, to a question like this, because you have to look at the specific situation again. But for me, as a general rule, right, if you have a problem, you must always ask for help from Allah. That one is in every situation, right? So regardless of the nature of the problem, how severe it is, or whether it's something huge or something trivial, any issue you may have, you must always go to Allah first, right? I mean, ask for help from Allah. That one is a given, right? Now, in terms of asking help from people, right, this is where you basically need to also exercise some discretion. So I do agree. I wouldn't say that in every single situation you need to ask for help from people, okay? Because in some cases maybe it is something that you may have to face by yourself, right? Certain problems, for example, you may not want to share with people, right? Let's say you have certain personal problems within your family, you don't want to start talking to so many different people, right? You don't want to sort of reveal the secrets within the home, within your family, to strangers outside. So you also need to have discretion in terms of who you consult for assistance, for advice and so on. So I think what I've said is more to say that, as a general rule, don't feel that if you are in need for help, you should tell yourself, okay, I should never ask for help, right? You should try to keep yourself open, right? In some cases, people can help you, right? But is it a situation where you always ask for help? Not necessarily. Again, you have to exercise your own judgment, right? I mean, it's not that every single problem, you start telling and I think, again, another problem is social media, right? People like to share their problems on social media, which I think is not a good thing. It's not a good thing. Every time something bad happens, and they will post something on IG or on Facebook. I don't think that is a good way to deal with issues that you have. Because what's the point of doing it, right? But of course, in certain cases, maybe it's useful. Let's say, for example, let's say you lost your cat. Right? My cat is missing. Okay, then fine. You post on Facebook. I lost this cat. You put a picture or something like that. That's fine, because it's for informational purposes. Somebody may find your cat, and then it's a way to try to resolve the problem. But let's say you have let's say you had a fight with with your brother, for example. You know, you have a fight, and then you put on Instagram, oh, I fought with my brother, and then, you know, this is what happened. He said this, I said this. I don't think we should be, sort of the putting all these, things, these bad things on social media. Right.
All right, sir.
Okay.
Right, so I guess that's the end of marks the end of the Q&A session. Thank you so much, sir, for entertaining all the questions, for all the presentation that you have done. I think we have reached the end of our session. I would like to express the utmost gratitude on behalf of the committee, on behalf of the IFSC, to our distinguished guest, Dr. Nazrol Kamil, for your efforts and times and your ideas in sharing all the useful and necessary knowledge and input for all of us who are in here. I guess if you guys have missed some parts of our session, don't worry. This session is being recorded and will be uploaded in the IFSC YouTube channel. So feel free to subscribe and watch all those videos. Not only this session, but only the previous session as well. Right. So I would like to also seize the opportunity here to plug in the future events of IFSC, which is also this sharing session also for the after this the following weeks. All right. So stay tuned for all the exciting programs and live session that will be conducted by IFSC. All right. So I think before we end, there is a request from the IFSC to have a photo session with all you guys. So I would like to appreciate if you guys can open your camera, a webcam, so that we can have a screenshot of this today's session. Yes. Thank you, Mumtaz, for opening your camera. So everyone else, so feel free to open your camera so that this can be one of the evidence that we are actually conducting this live session. Okay. All right, cool. All right. So anyone else wants to join so that we can see your handsome and pretty faces? All right, so I'll snap the screenshot, yeah. So smile. 1. Everyone ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3. All right, cool. Thank you, everyone. That's all from me. Thanks a zillion for all your participation. Thank you, Doctor, for your time and your ideas and your energy and everything. I really appreciate it. And last but not least, I would like to apologize on my part of this if there is any flaws or mistake from my part. Yes, I hopefully this session will be really fruitful and enjoyable for you guys. Yeah, inshallah, we can actually apply all those 10 quotes or all those 10 thoughts shared by our distinguished guest speaker. All right, so having said that, till we meet again, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Assalamualaikum.